November 12th, 2024. Los Angeles, Union Station. At 6:30 in the morning, surveillance cameras capture a woman standing near the Greyhound ticket counters. She's dressed in dark, low-profile clothing, carrying a backpack over one shoulder and a single travel bag in her hand. She purchases a one-way ticket to San Isidro, the last stop at the very edge of the United States, directly along the Mexican border. Just hours later, the same woman appears on security footage at the pedestrian border crossing. She walks with confidence, never looking back and never interacting with anyone around her. Behind her is Los Angeles, where her relatives have already started hanging missing person flyers, and Hawaii, the home state she left behind 4 days earlier. Ahead of her is Tijuana, a city known for having one of the highest crime rates in the region. Hana Kobayashi crosses the line separating two countries and disappears into the crowd on the Mexican side. Her phone had been turned off since the previous evening. Her social media accounts go silent, and her bank accounts are drained. The 30-year-old photographer had a paid flight to New York and confirmed work at a major event. Yet instead, she chose a path into the unknown without leaving her family a single note or explanation. The final moments of the surveillance footage end as Hannah's dark jacket blends into the stream of people moving through unfamiliar territory. At that point, the search for her officially moves beyond U.S. jurisdiction. 4 days before Hannah vanished into the crowd at the Mexican border on November 8, 2024, she left her home island of Maui. Up until that moment, Kobayashi's life in Hawaii appeared stable and professionally successful. At 30 years old, she had built a reputation as a sought-after photographer whose work was respected for its precision and style. The trip to New York wasn't random or impulsive. It was a carefully planned business trip combined with something from her personal bucket list. Her aunt was waiting for her in Brooklyn, and work had already been confirmed for the weekend of November 9th and 10th. Hannah had been hired as the official photographer for a large-scale show hosted by a well-known DJ. She traveled with professional camera equipment and a tightly organized schedule that was supposed to begin immediately after landing. But there was one detail about the trip that would later force investigators to take a closer look at her personal life. Hannah was not traveling alone. She was accompanied by her former partner. The decision to fly together after their breakup was explained purely by financial practicality. Their flights and reservations had been paid for months earlier, back when they were still together. The tickets were non-refundable, so the former couple agreed to keep their travel plans unchanged, deciding that once they arrived in New York, each of them would go their separate ways. Hannah planned to stay with relatives, while her travel companion had arranged accommodations elsewhere. The agreement seemed logical and final, until their route brought them into the transit terminal at Los Angeles International Airport. The flight from Hawaii landed at Los Angeles International Airport at 9:53 that night. According to the itinerary, the passengers had just over an hour to make their way across the terminal and board the connecting flight to New York, scheduled to depart at 11 p.m. For a major airport hub, it was a routine layover, enough time to transfer without rushing, but not enough for anyone to wander far. But surveillance footage and airline records reveal a strange split in the pair's movements. Hannah's former partner successfully passes through the gate and takes his seat on the aircraft. Hannah, for reasons still unknown, never steps onto the jet bridge. Instead, she remains inside the Los Angeles airport terminal, while the plane she was supposed to be on heads toward the East Coast. That night, the only part of Kobayashi that actually made it to New York was her luggage. Her suitcase, containing all of her personal belongings and possibly part of her camera equipment, followed the scheduled route and arrived at its final destination. Hannah's aunt, who had been waiting for her niece that Friday evening, was suddenly faced with a disturbing reality. The flight had arrived, the bags had been delivered, but the owner of the suitcase never appeared in the arrivals area. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Hannah was still somewhere inside the terminal. She contacted relatives and explained that she had missed the flight and was now trying to rebook her ticket. At first glance, the situation sounded like a routine travel mishap. But from that moment on, a chain of events began that completely contradicted her original plans, her professional commitments, and even her personality. Hannah had never previously walked away from work obligations or broken important agreements. Kobayashi remained alone in an unfamiliar city, with no change of clothes, carrying only a backpack and her cell phone, a device that would soon become the source of some of the strangest clues in the entire case. Saturday, November 9th. While her aunt in New York desperately tries to figure out what happened to her niece, Hannah continues moving through Los Angeles. Her phone remains active, but the tone and content of her outgoing messages suddenly shift, alarming nearly everyone close to her. One of her close friends receives a text claiming that Hannah had lost her entire financial savings. In the message, she says she had become the victim of a large-scale scam orchestrated by someone she loved and fully trusted. She writes that her bank accounts had been emptied and that her personal information had been stolen. But alongside those claims of fraud, an entirely different narrative begins appearing in messages sent to other people. In those conversations, Hannah talks about experiencing a sudden spiritual awakening. She writes about wanting to permanently walk away from modern technology, throw away her smartphone, and completely disconnect from the world she once knew. That contradiction, claims of being targeted in a serious financial crime while simultaneously describing a voluntary disappearance from society, leaves her family unable to understand what kind of help she actually needs. Her digital footprint confirms that by Saturday evening, Hannah still had access to financial accounts and continued spending money. Records from the payment platform Venmo show 2 transactions made less than an hour apart. The first transfer was sent at 6:25 p.m. The recipient was listed as Veronica Almendares. In the payment description, Hannah included only 2 symbols, a pink ribbon emoji and a bow and arrow emoji. Investigators were never able to determine the meaning behind the cryptic message. Exactly 54 minutes later, at 7:19 p.m., a second payment was sent. This time, the recipient was a man named Jonathan Taylor. The attached note contained only one word: reading, believed to be payment for a tarot card reading. Later, investigators would identify Taylor and bring him in for questioning. According to his statement, the meeting took place in person. He described Hannah's behavior as completely calm, rational, and emotionally balanced. In his words, she did not appear frightened, confused, or disoriented in any way. Taylor explained that she simply used his service and then left, giving the impression of someone who had made a firm and deliberate decision to change her lifestyle. That account directly contradicted the messages being received at the very same time by her mother and sister. Back in Hawaii, her sister Sydney and mother Brandy began sending dozens of texts and making repeated phone calls. They offered to immediately purchase a new plane ticket home or pay for a ride to her aunt's apartment in Brooklyn, insisting that it was unsafe for Hannah to remain alone in a massive city without luggage or any clear plan. But her reaction to those offers was the opposite of what the family expected. As her relatives became more persistent, Hannah began ignoring incoming calls. Her final text responses turned brief and absolute. Once again, she stated that she was getting rid of her phone and going completely offline. From that moment forward, the digital portrait of the photographer began breaking apart into fragments that no longer formed a clear or logical timeline. Cell tower data later confirmed that she had left the airport area and started moving deeper into Los Angeles. November 10th, the search effort shifts into central Los Angeles. Investigators gain access to surveillance footage from the Grove, one of the city's most popular outdoor shopping centers. The location features dozens of stores, restaurants, and open public spaces, with heavy weekend foot traffic moving constantly through the complex. One of the cameras near the Nike store captures a woman whose appearance fully matches the description of the missing photographer. In footage recorded during that time period, she is still wearing the exact same clothing seen earlier at the airport. Analysis of the surveillance video introduces yet another layer of contradictions into the case. At first, the cameras show Hannah walking through the shopping center at a normal pace, appearing calm and composed. But during closer examination of the footage, clips that would later become public, investigators and family members notice a dramatic shift in her demeanor. In the earlier moments, she seems relaxed. In later footage, her expression changes completely. She no longer smiles. She repeatedly looks over her shoulder and moves erratically through the crowds, as if she has suddenly lost her sense of direction inside an otherwise familiar urban environment. Those unsettling images become the backdrop for a series of alarming messages still being sent to her friends during those same hours. In the texts, Hannah openly states that she feels trapped with nowhere to go. She claims she can no longer afford a place to stay and now considers herself homeless. The messages say she doesn't even have enough money for the cheapest motel room. But in reality, for someone with her professional background and financial support system, Los Angeles offered multiple legitimate ways to resolve the situation, from asking mall security or staff for assistance to accepting the emergency money transfers her family repeatedly attempted to send. Even so, the pattern of her movements suggests something unusual. Hannah appeared to be intentionally avoiding any location where trained professionals or authorities might have been able to provide immediate help. By the evening of November 10th, the search area expands toward major transportation hubs. Surveillance cameras begin capturing Hannah in locations far removed from tourist districts. Geolocation data and visual confirmations indicate that she has started using the Los Angeles subway system. She is spotted on train platforms and inside underground passageways, signaling a dramatic shift in her surroundings and daily behavior. In less than 48 hours, a successful professional with a carefully planned career opportunity waiting in New York had seemingly transformed into someone drifting through the streets of a massive city with no clear destination. In every piece of footage recovered from the Grove and the surrounding neighborhoods, Hannah is completely alone. No one appears beside her restricting her movements or applying visible physical pressure. She chooses her own direction, enters buildings on her own, and leaves freely. And yet, the very fact that a successful working photographer was wandering through one of the most expensive shopping districts in Los Angeles, while simultaneously claiming to be completely broke, created a major contradiction for investigators. This apparent voluntary collapse into street life quickly became one of the central mysteries of the case. From the outside, it still seemed as though a single phone call could have returned her to safety, stability, and normal life. By the end of November 10th, the trail of Hannah's light-colored sweatsuit disappears into subway tunnels, leading toward some of the city's more troubled neighborhoods. November 11th, 2024. Monday. By this point, Hannah Kobayashi had already spent 3 full days in Los Angeles. While relatives back in Hawaii continue trying to trace her calls and messages, Hannah appears to sink deeper into an urban environment, more commonly associated with people living without permanent housing. Security cameras throughout the metro system track her movements through stations, considered some of the most challenging areas in terms of public safety. In the middle of the day, she is spotted at Rosa Parks Station, a major transit hub in South Los Angeles. Hannah appears calm. She is still carrying both her travel bag and backpack, but her behavior no longer resembles that of a traveler searching for an airport exit or connecting transportation. She does not approach station employees, and she makes no visible attempt to charge her phone or seek assistance. Around 10 or that night, her route leads her to Pico Station. There, an encounter takes place that would later become one of the key moments in analyzing her psychological condition. Internal surveillance cameras capture Hannah in the company of an unidentified man. For several hours, the two remain in constant visual contact. They walk through the platform area together, sit on benches, and engage in long conversations. Police would later identify and question the man multiple times. Investigators confirmed that he was a longtime resident of the city streets, but had no criminal record or known history of violent behavior. According to his statement, Hannah initiated the conversation herself. He claimed she spoke repeatedly about wanting to clear her mind and free her life from material distractions. The man described her not as someone being controlled or abducted, but as a person deeply consumed by the idea of spiritual liberation. They spend the entire night of November 12th inside the station. At 4 in the morning, surveillance cameras capture both of them settling down to sleep directly on the platform. According to the witness, they had agreed to stay together until the above-ground transit services reopened for the day. But he says he fell asleep first. While he was sleeping, Hannah carried out a series of actions that suggested complete awareness and careful preparation for a final disappearance. Around 5 a.m., she enters the station restroom area. Roughly 20 minutes later, she re-emerges onto the platform, looking completely different. She has fully changed clothes. The light-colored outfit that had become the primary identifying feature in every missing person bulletin is gone. Instead, she is now dressed in dark, low-profile clothing, designed to blend into the crowd. She is still carrying her travel bag, but now her movements appear faster, more direct, and noticeably more confident. Detectives reviewing the footage later focused on one specific detail. Hannah didn't simply change her clothes. She changed the way she moved. She no longer glances around searching for cameras. She walks with purpose toward the station exit, leaving the sleeping man behind on the bench without saying a word. That moment at Pico Station would later become one of the strongest arguments against the theory that Hannah was confused, disoriented, or detached from reality. Changing outfits inside a public transit station and quietly separating from the only known witness resembled the behavior of someone who understood they were being searched for and intentionally wanted to make identification more difficult. By 6 that morning, when she exits the subway system and heads toward Union Station, she no longer resembles the missing woman appearing across local news broadcasts. She looks like an ordinary traveler preparing for a long journey. Everything documented during those 24 hours points toward one conclusion. November 11th became the day of Hannah's final transformation, the moment she appeared to fully accept the rules of a new life hidden from everyone who knew her. November 12th, 2024. 58-year-old Ryan Kobayashi arrives at Los Angeles International Airport. Up until that point, he had been living on the island of Maui, Hawaii, and according to relatives, had not maintained regular contact with his daughter in recent years. But after learning about her disappearance, he leaves behind his normal life and work responsibilities to personally coordinate search efforts on the mainland. Together with Hannah's aunt, who had flown in from New York, he establishes an improvised operations center dedicated to finding her. Most of Ryan's activity centers around the area surrounding Los Angeles International Airport and nearby transportation hubs. Surveillance footage and witnesses capture him there daily. Kobayashi methodically walks through parking garages, waiting areas, and bus terminals, handing out flyers with updated photos of his daughter. He personally approaches hundreds of pedestrians, taxi drivers, and security employees, asking if anyone has seen her. Over the course of 13 days, Ryan becomes the public face of the search effort, regularly appearing on major television broadcasts. During interviews, he repeatedly states that he will not stop searching until he receives reliable information about Hannah's whereabouts. He also urges volunteers to join organized searches through city neighborhoods and transit corridors. As time passes, the the areas Ryan searches begin expanding into districts known for elevated criminal activity and difficult street conditions. Despite having no investigative background, he checks homeless encampments and low-cost motels, hoping to locate anyone who may have seen Hannah after she changed clothes and left Pico Station. At the same time, his former wife Brandy and their second daughter Sydney continue coordinating the information campaign back in Hawaii, managing tips and volunteer communication through social media platforms. November 24, 2024. On the 13th day after Ryan Kobayashi arrived in Los Angeles, the search operation is interrupted by tragedy. At approximately 4 in the morning, a police patrol discovers a parked vehicle in a lot near Los Angeles International Airport. Inside the car, officers find the body of Ryan Kobayashi. Detectives immediately request archived footage from surveillance cameras covering the parking area. A detailed review of the recordings confirms that during the hours leading up to the discovery, no one approached the vehicle. The car was locked from the inside, and investigators found no signs of a struggle, forced entry, or outside involvement. Forensic analysis and evidence collected at the scene later lead the Los Angeles Police Department to issue an official conclusion. Ryan Kobayashi's death was not considered a criminal act and was determined to be the result of a personal decision. The loss sends shockwaves through the media. The Kobayashi family releases a public statement confirming Ryan's passing and thanking everyone who had participated in the search effort. Brandy and Sydney explain that the tragedy has only strengthened their determination to find Hannah, but they now also require additional financial support. A fundraiser is launched through GoFundMe, quickly collecting more than $4,000. The funds are intended to cover the cost of returning Ryan's body to Hawaii and continuing the work of private investigators. Despite widespread media coverage surrounding her father's death, including reports reaching areas where Hannah was believed to possibly be staying, there is no response from her. The search continues under the weight of devastating family loss, while Ryan Kobayashi gradually becomes a symbol of the painful uncertainty consuming the entire family. But while the Kobayashis prepare for Ryan's funeral, private investigators begin uncovering parts of Hannah's life that even her mother and sister reportedly never knew existed. One name suddenly enters the case: Twin Flames Universe. The organization has frequently been described in the United States as a controversial and potentially destructive spiritual group. Investigators discover that in the months leading up to her departure from Hawaii, Hannah had become deeply involved in studying the group's ideology, a belief system centered around detaching from material possessions and traditional social ties. At the same time, another discovery surfaces from public records: an official marriage registration linking Hannah to an Argentine citizen named Alan Cacace. The marriage had reportedly been kept secret from her relatives, giving investigators reason to suspect the possibility of undisclosed financial or immigration-related obligations. Once that information becomes public, the situation surrounding the GoFundMe campaign changes dramatically. Many of the people who donated more than $4,000 begin demanding transparency, while others request refunds, believing they may have been misled about the true circumstances surrounding Hannah's disappearance. The family suddenly finds itself at the center of a growing public controversy, one that ultimately destroys much of the public support behind the search effort. In December 2024, the Los Angeles Police Department took its final step in the investigation, officially closing the missing person case. The key evidence did not come from surveillance footage, but from files recovered from Hannah's cloud storage accounts after investigators gained access to her digital data. Detectives discovered personal notes dating back to 2023. In those writings, Hannah allegedly outlined, step by step, the concept of what she called a digital disappearance. The notes detailed methods for disabling location tracking, creating a new identity, and legally crossing international borders without drawing attention from authorities. For the Los Angeles Police Department, those documents became the legal basis for concluding that her disappearance had been entirely voluntary. Under United States law, an adult citizen has the right to remain anonymous as long as no criminal activity is involved. Today, Hana Kobayashi is officially considered alive, but voluntarily removed from the life she once knew. It is the story of a woman who planned her disappearance so carefully that not even the tragedy involving her father was enough to bring her out of the shadows of Tijuana.